born in a time when we were still saying hello, hello, hello on the landline to Chennai, back and forth, spending most of our time talking like that instead of actually being able to interact with our cousins and our aunts and uncles, grandparents. I grew up in Pittsburgh, like I said, and there was a Sri Venkateshwara temple there, which my parents were one of many founders of. Growing up there every summer, they would bring Carnatic music vocalists, mridangam players, to teach, also give kacheris there. And I remember studying from a very young age with Mr. Ramachandran, studying vocal music. And I always had a love for vocal music, for acting, for being a performer. At the age of 2 or 3, I think the story goes in our family, that I was singing TV songs like the Brady Bunch. I don't know if you're familiar with the Brady Bunch. It's a very popular show in the 70s and 80s in the United States. The Brady Bunch tune, and my mom heard me and I was singing on pitch, and she said, let's get him vocal lessons. People laughed her off and said, he's too young at 2 years old, who gets vocal lessons for their child? But she persevered, and at 5 years old I started vocal lessons. And at 5, I also started performing on the stage, live in front of people. And this is in Pittsburgh, to a predominantly Western audience, singing country and Western songs, singing Christmas songs, singing all kinds of Western songs. I hope I was a natural at it, that's the way I remember it, but I'm trying not to look at the videos, in case I'm wrong. I studied saxophone around the same time, and luckily for me, and I'm sure in many of your lives you've had those people who have influenced you greatly, who have said there's some talent there, there's some spark there for whatever it is that you do, and have said, let's encourage that. And for me, I'm very lucky that my mom and dad did that for me. In a country that was new to them, they didn't have a lot of people around them to say, hey, this is something that might be something that your child will flourish in. They still took a chance and encouraged that. Got me saxophone lessons, voice lessons, piano lessons, dancing, choir, Broadway singing, and then of course Carnatic singing, sometimes mridangam playing. This was throughout my youth. And I started acting as well. In fact, one time with my late father as well. He took me for an audition. And they loved me so much at 12, but they didn't have anybody to play my father. And they came out of the audition room, and they saw my dad standing there and said, hey, would you like to audition? And I was praying he would say no, say no, say no. And he said, of course. So he went in, auditioned, and got the part. And for 8 joyous weeks, we got to perform together. I continued in that vein, training myself in whatever ways my parents thought were right in Pittsburgh, as well as what my mentors, who would then become my university professors like Robert Page, who's a Grammy Award-winning choir conductor, who recently retired. He was the head of the School of Music at Carnegie Mellon University, which is a Pittsburgh-based university. Known very famously throughout the world for its computer science departments, for its engineering departments, but also maybe not around the world, but definitely in the West for its drama department, for its music department, for its art department. Andy Warhol went there. So many of the actors that you see now on Tata Sky went there, in movies went there. Academy Award winners, everyone. Somewhere around that time, my dad had convinced me, like himself, to become an engineer. He wanted me to become an engineer. And with God's grace and good grades and, my parents making me study, I got into the engineering program at Carnegie Mellon University, as well as the science program. But my mentor at that time, Dr. Robert Page, sat my parents down and said, what do you want your child to be doing? And like good South Indian parents, they said, well, we want him to be a doctor or an engineer. He's smart enough and he needs to make a good living. And this Dr. Page, who we respected very much, said, look, he can do that later, but right now I can tell you he is in the top 0.1% of any of the students I've ever taught. With his musicality, with his charisma, with his ability to sing, to charm, to be a good musician. And I think he needs to pursue for the first 4 years of his college education, music. And I remember coming out of his house and sitting down and asking my Appa, I was like, Appa, yan apa lang? And Dad sort of sighed in the front seat and said, well, I guess you're going to music school. And I went straight into Carnegie Mellon's music school. I was a double major in saxophone and voice. Vocal performance meaning opera, and classical saxophone meaning Western classical saxophone. And right off the bat, my freshman year, I won the concerto competition there, which in any kind of conservatory setting, whether it's the Paris Conservatoire of Music, whether it's Carnegie Mellon University, whether it's Eastman, whether it's Juilliard, that concerto competition is the big prize to be winning as a second-year master's student. As I was competing against pianists who were second-year master's students, violinists, vocalists from all 4 years and then graduate years of the university, and I won it as a saxophonist, which no saxophonist had ever won it, and no freshman had ever won it first year. So I got to play the Glazunov Concerto, which is a Russian composer in the 20th century, his saxophone concerto, with live orchestra at Carnegie Hall. And then, the second year, I decided I needed to come to India to see my Perima, see my family. And my mom had wanted to come and visit the family after a while. And I said, I don't want to lose touch with the music. Let me study some music with Kadri Gopalnath, who had heard his CD, thinking this is a natural fit. And thinking, like in the West, how we study music. We study music, we go to the teacher's house 1 hour a week. We learn one lesson, go home, practice for a week, and then go back to play that lesson and then learn the new lesson. First day in Chennai we landed, we saw that he was playing a concert here at one of the, I don't know which concert hall, but he was playing it here. And we went up and my mom asked him in Kannada, do you mind if my son studies with you? And he said, of course, Ma, no problem. He can come to Mangalore, live with me, and study with me. And my mom asked me, is that okay with you? And I thought, yeah, of course. So I went to his house, and I lived in the old style of study. I laid on the concrete floor, practiced for 15 hours a day, getting up at 5 in the morning, doing 2 pujas every day, and learning from him while he was there. And I learned so much. Not only just, we hear the term ABCD a lot, and in that time I think it was even more pronounced, the cliche of ABCD. Because in that country we didn't have the easy opportunity to learn the culture that our parents had been born and brought up with, and were desperately trying to infuse us with. We had the survival instinct of how to be an American in that society and not stick out, but also how to incorporate the traditions that we were being brought up with at home. But coming here to India was eye-opening because I wasn't under the umbrella of being protected by my family. I was forced to drink any water, forced to eat any savan, forced to live in any hotel that my Guruji was living in. And it was wonderful. It gave me an opportunity to meld those two sides in my way. And I think that, in essence, is what I feel like is happening now globally with so many people around the world, both music-wise and acting-wise. But as I started this speech off with people traveling, the world is growing smaller. You see so many of the same brands here now. You see so many of the same music there now. So to finish the history and then get back to that, I finished college. I went on and did a Broadway show called Miss Saigon. I was, I think, one of the few Indians at that time doing a unionized Broadway tour of a major musical. And it was Cameron McIntosh. It was the Broadway tour, and we toured all around the country. And I then went on to play Romeo, as was said before, in productions that weren't Desi-centric or weren't specifically, oh, this is set in India, so we have to hire an Indian. My focus in my career is to try to do things that are both, if they're wonderful roles, do them as Indian, definitely, but also try to do them that doesn't push me into any specific race over there, at least. Played Romeo, played a few other Shakespearean parts. And then all of a sudden was given this wonderful opportunity to work with A.R. Rahman in Bombay Dreams. To be the first South Asian lead above the title. We say South Asian there because we don't want to be offensive to Pakistanis, Sri Lankans, and Bangladeshis, but Indian. Indian lead above the title in a Broadway show in New York City, $14 million Broadway show that still, 10 years later, no one has done. What a great opportunity that was to go to England, my first time in England, and be asked if I would like to perform for George W. Bush's first trip to England. Which Andrew Lloyd Webber came up to me and asked me, hey, would you like to sing? And I thought, oh, sure, I'd love to sing. Great. Thinking it would be a huge hall, like the Kennedy Center or Chowdhury Hall or something like that, big theater. And then 2 days before we go, I was told, oh, by the way, you need to dress in a black tie because the Queen will be there, the Prince Andrew will be there, and all these other people will be there. I thought, okay, still, they're going to be far away. So we go through 3 bits of security to get to the hall. We go in, and it's a small house that we're in, which is the ambassador's residence in England, American ambassador to England's residence in London. We're sitting there, we aren't shown the room where we're singing in, and then all of a sudden I'm ushered in with my co-star Anisha Nagarajan, who's also a Pittsburgher and also from, her family's from Tamil Nadu. Shuffled into this room where there are only 6 tables, smaller than this room. And I'm standing there and I can barely move, and literally, I start singing the first verse of the song with the piano player, and I look at the second table on this side is the President Bush, and then the Queen of England, and then Condoleezza Rice, and Colin Powell, and then Queen's husband, and Laura Bush. And I'm thinking, okay, that's the table, that's the big power table. And then as I'm singing the second verse, I look beyond it, there's Prince Charles, Prince Andrew. So we finish the song and we think, okay, they're not going to come up to us. And I'd asked before, what do you do when you meet the Queen? Do you bow? Do you curtsy? I have no idea. They said, don't do anything, just say, thank you, ma'am. And don't touch her or anything. And we're standing in the line and she comes out and she comes and says, oh, you were so wonderful. And then puts her hand out and then I shake her hand. Which is incredible, and all that I could think of was my mom telling me the story of 1961 in Bangalore when her sister, and her brother all stood in Bangalore by the Victoria statue waiting for the Queen to come by. And how much things have changed. So from that, I started branching out into movies. I've co-starred with Mike Myers of Austin Powers fame in a Paramount Picture movie called The Love Guru. I've done soundtrack work for that as well, recording some songs for the album with Mike. It was a pretty big deal, $71 million movie, which was panned by the critics, panned by the Western press. I think we had some Hindu pundit in Nevada who took special offense and started writing in his blog, Mr. Rajan Zaid, who I've never met. But a great opportunity for me to get to work on that scale of a production. And somewhere around there, my music career started taking off. I was asked to host the Bollywood Fashion Awards, which is a big deal in the US. They bring people from India, the big movie stars, and then some of the big designers to come do a huge runway show in New York City. And they'd seen Bombay Dreams and they said, hey, would you like to MC the whole event? And I was thinking the Oscars, okay, it's going to be big because, ZTV is going to be there, Sony's going to be covering it, all these things. And they wanted me to sing. And I thought, I don't want to sing the Bombay Dreams stuff, even though Rahman Sir, of course, is my hero, and I owe a lot to him. But I thought, people have heard it in New York City, let me sing something else, but I didn't have any music. So a friend of mine introduced me to this incredible musician who's now become a dear friend of mine, named Radovan Jovicevic. He is a Yugoslavian, now Serbian, expat, who lives in New York City, a huge rock star in that part of the world. Back when it was communist, when they had 2 TV stations, he talks about how one day he was walking down the street and he had an interview on the BBC of Yugoslavia. The next day he was a megastar. And they had wonderful rock songs that people all around the world know, and in fact, if you take him to any kind of Yugoslavian expat place, people just stop and stare. We started working on songs together. We worked on maybe 40 tracks together and placed them in movies for Vanessa Williams, for movies of mine, for other different things, whether they're commercials or whether they're things for like the Juilliard School. And I met this other musician named Frank London, who does this music called Klezmer music, which is Jewish-based music, Eastern European Jewish wedding music, which then was sort of a lost art for a while and then was revived by bands around the world. And they have Jewish festivals around the world, and I've sung with Frank for 10,000 people in Warsaw. He's part of a band called the Klezmatics, which won a Grammy Award 2 years ago. Maybe 3 years ago now, for Woody Guthrie-inspired lyrics to klezmer music. I've recorded an album with him. We've performed that around the world. So I'm lucky to have these collaborators. And we're working on a new concept, which is a Desi Jewish sort of Jugalbandi fusion concept with this dole player, tabla sisha of Maestro Al-Raka, named Gypsy, he was also in Bombay Dreams, who's an on-stage percussionist, but he lives in New York City now. So those are the things, and what I'm finding is that when I started working with these musicians, that the music of the Balkans, the gypsy music of the Balkans, the history of the gypsies, is debatable, but most people will say the gypsies in Europe came from India, northern India, and that a lot of their melody comes from that. And the rhythms also, because the Balkans are this intermediate place between Europe and Asia, is sort of a fusion already. And working with Radovan, and I can play you some of the tracks and then I can sing a song for you. He played me this song called Jelem Jelem, which I've performed a few times. But just the first verse of the song, I don't know, something in me, I heard it, I didn't know what the lyrics meant. But for me, spoke to me. And I can sing a little bit for you right now. Let me take a little sip of water. Jelem jelem, lungo nadromeise, maladilem, shukaleromeise. Jelem jelem, lungo nadromeise, maladilem, shukaleromeise. And then it'll go into a beat. But you can hear some of the gamaka sort of, there's something there that's similar. There's some essence there that somehow I can't put into words, but speaks to me. And same with the Jewish music as well. I can play you a little something here. Let me see what I have. Here's another song that we did, which is a Romanian gypsy anthem. And this is Radovan and I used together in the studio. That's Radovan. similar, the music is from around the world, with YouTube, with the internet, with the traveling becoming so easy between cultures. On one hand, we're losing maybe some authentic culture. On the other hand, we're gaining some sharing of culture. And I don't know what's right. I don't know what is... On one hand, it's sad because many indigenous cultures might be being lost forever. But hopefully, with cameras, with recordings, we at least can capture it before they're gone for good. And that's sort of what I'm looking for in the music that I do. In the film work that I do, I think Bombay Dreams was very much in the West at least, in the United States, was very much on this beginning wave of India not just being Ravi Shankar and yoga and meditation and Osho and transcendental meditation and things like that, but being much more as diverse as we all know it to be. Knowing that the food, the language, even the different styles of cinema are so diverse. It was amazing to me when Bombay Dreams came out in 2004 that the reviews in the Western press were, and I hope you forgive me for saying it, between bigoted and racist. You had the USA Today, the head writer of the USA Today, the headline was, smells like a whole lot of curry, was the title of the review. The New Yorker reviewer at the time said, and this isn't direct quotes, but this is what I remember, said, "I've never seen a Bollywood film, and I don't even care what it is. And this, I don't understand what it is." Well, if you don't understand what Bollywood is, what the hell are you doing reviewing it? But I'll tell you, within the 6 to 8 months that we were doing the show, through that 6 to 8 months, Monsoon Wedding, which had already premiered, became much more of a DVD rental. So everybody started to see what that was, and it was becoming a huge hit in people's houses. You had Gurundat Chanda's, I forget, it's with Aishwarya Rai. I'll think of it in a second, but that came out as well. So you had people who all of a sudden knew what Bollywood was, and that came... No, it wasn't Mistress... Not Bendit Like Beckham. Bride and Prejudice, that's it, thank you. Bride and Prejudice, yes. So that had come out too. So you had a lot of things coming together at the same time. It was a wonderful sort of critical mass, which hit about 2 months after Bombay Dreams came out. But the audiences knew right away, and all of a sudden our houses were packed, and people were coming with the expectation of seeing the kitsch in the US, what one would call kitsch of what Bollywood was and what this show was, which was wonderful. And you've seen the fruits of it now, with movies such as the Ang Lee movie, Life of Pi, of course. Thank you, this is good. Life of Pi, and many, many other movies that you've seen. So, in that way, it was sort of the door opening for those things, and then opening also for actors such as myself, that as the Indians in America started to have some money, and the ad dollars started going towards making sure that they were buying products. So all of a sudden on TV you saw Indians on TV, not just as terrorists or cab drivers in the West, those stereotypes, but now becoming more Silicon Valley computer geeks or doctors or people with superpowers as in heroes. So those things started to go hand in hand, and still are. And now what's great is as you're looking at TV shows being cast in the United States every year, this year now is starting pilot season. Pilot season there is where all the studios come together and pick up the different scripts for the new TV shows, and then we'll put a ton of money into the TV shows to produce one episode. They'll cast them, they'll produce one episode, and then they'll view the one episode to see if they like it, to put it into production for 13 and then 26 episode order for the season. Every TV show that you've seen has had that happen. But as you're looking at the breakdowns of characters there for Indian actors, you're seeing, for any actors, you're seeing now much more people looking specifically for Indian or South Asian actors. You're seeing people looking specifically for Persian or Middle Eastern actors. You're seeing people looking specifically for black actors, and then people looking for ethnically ambiguous actors who are not white. But one of the reasons for that is selling to the Indians abroad. But I think one of the reasons also is selling to the Indians here. As I'm looking here on Star TV, all the Western TV shows that are here, they know they have a huge market here. With, from our perspective, the money pouring in to India and coming out of India, it's only helping us as actors, helping us as musicians, helping us in so many ways. I would love to open it up to questions if you have any, and then we can discuss more. So,
how about the Bombay Dreams song?
Oh, Bombay Dreams song, sure. I don't have the track to it here, but I can definitely play you something here. You want me to sing or play?
Sing.
Okay. Sure. There's a song called The Journey Home, which I think is one of the most beautiful songs that Rahman has written for English language. It's, for me, it's so wonderful to be here because he's given so many of us so much joy with his music. And I'm sure many of you who have met him or know him, or the thing that was amazing to me and inspiring to me is someone with that much success is still such an amazing person, a human being, and such a giving human being. He was so kind to us throughout that, and still is. This song comes in the middle of Bombay Dreams, towards the end, and it's my song after my best friend has died in my arms. And I sing how I've lost my way going into Bollywood and lost my way from the slum that I've come from, and it's called The Journey Home. The journey home is never too long. Your heart arrives before the train. The journey home is never too long. Some yesterdays always remain. I'm going back to where my heart was light, when my pillow was a ship I sailed through the night. The journey home is never too long. Your heart arrives before the train. The journey home is never too long. Some yesterdays always remain. I want to feel the way that I did then. I'll think my wishes through before I wish again. Not every road you come across is one you have to take. No, sometimes standing still can be the best move you ever make. Aja Savarya, Aja Savarya, Aja Savarya. The journey home is never too long. Home helps to heal the deepest pain. The journey home is never too long. Some yesterdays always remain. Thank you very much.